You know, carbon fiber is pretty much everywhere. It's this incredible wonder material. But what if I told you there's a fundamental property of it that for decades we couldn't even measure? A secret it's been hiding until now.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find it in airplanes, in supercars, even in your fancy tennis racket. We thought we knew it inside and out, but turns out a huge piece of the puzzle was just missing. Well, thanks to some seriously clever science, that's all changing. So let's dig into this mystery, shall we?
All right, so what is this big puzzle? Well, before we can get to what we didn't know, we have to talk about just how incredible the stuff we did know about carbon fiber really is.
Okay, look at this list. This is basically an engineer's dream checklist. We're talking super high strength, incredible stiffness, but it's light as a feather. Plus, it conducts electricity and barely expands when it gets hot. It's almost the perfect material. But you notice something missing? There's one really important property that's just not on this list. And that's the big one. What is its electric permittivity? This one question has had scientists scratching their heads for years. We could measure everything else, how strong it is, how stiff, how conductive, but not this. And without that number, we're basically flying blind, missing out on all sorts of cool applications. So what even is electric permittivity?
All right, let's break this down. It sounds kind of technical, I know, but trust me, the main idea is pretty simple. So in a nutshell, permittivity is just a measure of how a material reacts when you stick it in an electric field. Think of it like electrical squishiness. When that field hits it, do the charges inside kind of stretch and realign themselves, or do they just stay put? That's what permittivity tells us.
So if you've got a material with high permittivity, it's really squishy. The charges move around a lot. But a low permittivity material, it's pretty rigid electrically speaking. It barely reacts at all. And knowing this difference is absolutely critical if you're designing, well, anything from advanced sensors to new kinds of electronics. Which brings us back to the big question. If this is so important, why was it impossible to measure for carbon fiber?
And this is where we get to the heart of the problem. It's a real paradox, actually. The very property that makes carbon fiber so great was also the thing that made it impossible to measure.
Okay, here's the deal. To get permittivity, you first have to measure something called capacitance. Easy enough, right? Wrong. The tools we use to measure capacitance are built for materials that don't conduct electricity, insulators. But carbon fiber is a great conductor. So when you try to measure it, its conductivity basically just shorts out the instrument. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a massive hole in it. The measurement just drains away before you can even get a reading. And for a long, long time, that was the end of the story. It was just unmeasurable. A known unknown. But then, a team of researchers had a eureka moment and came up with this incredibly clever and, surprisingly simple, way to get around the problem.
So instead of trying to fight the conductivity, they decided to use it to their advantage. It's brilliant, really. First, they wrapped the fiber in a super thin insulating film. That's step one, isolate it. Then they put electrodes at different distances along the fiber and took a bunch of capacitance measurements. What they ended up with was a series of data points that held the secret.
And here's a look at the actual setup. See? You've got the carbon fiber, that little insulating film, and then the copper electrodes on top. It looks so simple, but this little setup solved the problem that stumped scientists for decades. Just by adding that one insulating layer, they could finally get a reliable reading. And this right here, this is the magic trick. This is the big reveal. They took their measurements, plotted the inverse of the capacitance against the distance, and boom, a perfect straight line. And the best part? The slope of that line, rise over run from high school math class, that slope directly gave them the number they were looking for, the hidden permittivity. It's so elegant. It's just beautiful.
So, the moment of truth. After all this clever work, what did they actually find? What was the secret number that carbon fiber had been hiding all this time?
Now, they didn't just test one kind of carbon fiber. They looked at two different types. First, there's the P100, which is super organized at a microscopic level, very crystalline and a better conductor. Then you've got the P25, which is a bit more jumbled up and less conductive. So the question is, would this difference in structure change their secret number?
All right, let's start with the P100 fiber, the really structured one. The value they measured was, well, let's just say nobody was expecting it to be this big.
4960. Now, to give you some context, the permittivity of empty space is just 1. Most plastics are somewhere between 2 and 4. So, nearly 5,000? That's not just big, that's enormous. It means the charges inside that fiber are just incredibly mobile and responsive.
Okay, so what about its less organized cousin, the P25? Was it going to be in the same ballpark?
Yep, 3960. Still a massive number, right? But a little bit lower than the P100, and that actually makes perfect sense. The more perfect crystalline structure of the P100 means it's just a bit easier for those charges to move around and polarize, giving it that slightly higher value.
So when you look at them side by side, it's obvious both are just in a totally different league than most materials. But that cleaner structure in the P100 gives it a clear win. Okay, so great, we have the numbers. But so what? Why does this even matter?
Oh, this is way more than just a number for a textbook. Knowing this is like a video game character suddenly getting a brand new special ability. It completely changes the game and opens up a ton of new possibilities for carbon fiber.
We're talking about some seriously futuristic stuff here. Think about self-sensing materials. Imagine an airplane wing that literally feels when it's under too much stress and can report damage as it happens. Or what about a bridge that tells us when it needs repairs? And that's not all. This property makes carbon fiber perfect for shielding our sensitive electronics from interference, or even for creating brand new kinds of ultra-efficient heaters. The list just goes on and on.
You know, for decades, it feels like we were only reading a few chapters of the book on carbon fiber. But now we finally unlock the rest of the story. By figuring out how to measure this one property, we didn't just solve an old science puzzle. We've handed engineers a powerful new tool. And the really exciting part is thinking about what they're going to build with it. What's the next frontier for this wonder material? That's the question.